Hello and welcome to the last Lincoln property blog of 2025, brought to you by Ben from Walters of Lincolnshire. This week we discuss how Lincoln's property market is now worth £8.692 billion and why it matters to your own home, choices and long-term financial security. As we hit the third week of December, the Lincoln property market does slow down, ready for the big day. It's at this time of year I like to step back and work out the total value of every home in Lincoln, and how that value has changed since 2010, as that was the bottom of the market after the credit crunch. Since then, Lincoln has been through market cycles, mortgage booms, periods of national uncertainty, political shifts and economic swings. Yet when you step back, the story is simple. Lincoln housing wealth has risen markedly. In the last 15 years, the total value of Lincoln housing has risen by 74.4%, from just over £4.984 billion to around £8.692 billion today. That increase has been created simply because homes in the city are now worth more than they were. For freehold owners, that growth has happened whether they renovated the kitchen, extended the lounge, or did nothing at all. To put that into some form of understandable scale, if Lincoln's property wealth were a company listed on the UK stock market, it would sit comfortably in value between Admiral Group and Severn Trent, comparable to household name businesses employing thousands of people. The difference is that the value here is not held by investors or shareholders, but by thousands of ordinary Lincoln households. That alone changes your view of the place we live. Over the same 15-year period, the FTSE 100 has risen by 69.5%, and UK retail inflation has risen by just over 55.9%. In other words, Lincoln property has not just kept up, it has remained a serious store of wealth for many households. When you look at the average price paid for a Lincoln home over the last 12 months, the figure sits at £218,286. However, averages always mask the real story, so I split the city into its main property types. That is where the differences become clear. Detached homes in Lincoln currently have an average value of around £300,500. Across the housing stock, that equates to just under £2.738 billion of housing wealth held in detached homes alone. Semi-detached houses in Lincoln currently average £212,359, representing over £2.686 billion of total value. Terraced and townhouses in Lincoln sit at an average of £175,135, collectively equating to £2.244 billion. Flats and apartments in Lincoln average £133,196, representing £1.023 billion. Whether you own a flat, a terrace, a semi-detached, or a detached Lincoln home, you hold a share of something that has grown steadily, even when national headlines have been turbulent. So why does £8.692 billion matter to you? Because property value is not just a number on a website, it affects real-life decisions. When you can move, what you can afford, what you can borrow, what you can pass on, and how secure you feel. 1. If you're a homeowner. Rising housing wealth gives you options, not always immediately and not always evenly, but options nonetheless. Equity can reduce risk. The bigger the gap between what you owe and what the home is worth, the more resilient you tend to be to market wobbles. Equity can create flexibility. Moving, extending, helping family, or restructuring finances becomes easier when you have a stronger base. It can change your next move maths. Sometimes the best decision is not sell now, but hold, improve, and time it well. 2. If you're thinking of selling in 2026, this matters because buyers don't buy averages. They buy specific streets, specific homes, and specific lifestyles. The headline £8.692 billion tells us Lincoln remains desirable overall, but the price you achieve depends on how your home is positioned, marketed, and negotiated. In a market where buyers are more rate sensitive than they were a few years ago, the winners tend to be homes that are priced realistically, not hopefully, launched properly, strong first impression, negotiated firmly, not just agreed quickly. 3. If you're a first-time buyer or trying to become one. This matters because the biggest barrier is rarely the monthly payment alone. It's the deposit gap. A significant portion of families renting in Lincoln are doing so not because they are unable to buy, but because the pace of deposit saving has been slower than property price growth. When homes rise faster than wages, the deposit gap widens, which is exactly what has happened since 2010. That can understandably feel frustrating. But there is a second point that's often missed. Markets like Lincoln tend to reward planning and precision. The buyers who succeed are usually the ones who get mortgage ready early, choose areas where their budget is strongest, not where it's stretched. Move decisively when the right home appears. 4. If you're a landlord or investor. Higher values influence yields, lending, and tenant affordability. Even if rents don't rise at the same pace as prices, the underlying value can still matter for long-term strategy, refinancing, and portfolio decisions. It's not just what rent can I get, but what risk am I carrying, and what is my exit plan? Why Lincoln values have held up. Lincoln's appeal has been shaped by long-standing fundamentals. Good transport links, a growing education base, and continuous residential demand have helped. Families tend to move in, stay for many years, move once or twice locally, and that leads to demand stability. Meanwhile, supply has not kept pace. Many will comment with justification that parts of Lincoln have felt like building sites in recent years. Yet when compared to need, the number of new homes delivered has been insufficient. Every year, the number of household formations exceeds the number of completed additional homes. That ongoing shortage acts as a support for existing values. The mortgage market also plays its part. Rates are still higher than the record lows of a few years ago, yet if you zoom out historically, borrowing remains reasonable. Households that bought 10 or 12 years ago often remortgage today against dramatically increased equity. In many cases, that equity allows extensions, upgrades, or even assisting children with deposits. The ironic outcome is that rising wealth benefits those already on the ladder far more than those wishing to climb onto it. That is not unique to Lincoln, but Lincoln illustrates it clearly. Where is that wealth actually held? What makes Lincoln's housing market particularly interesting is how wealth is spread. There is no single neighbourhood that holds most of the value. The billions of pounds of property wealth are split through detached streets, Victorian terraces, 1960s estates, modern developments, flats above shops, edge-of-town family homes, and older stock around historical streets. When you picture £8.692 billion, it is easy to imagine vast commercial buildings or major institutions. Instead, it is held in living rooms, gardens, driveways, converted lofts, extensions, and family homes that have been bought, sold, rented, and inherited across generations. We should remember something. Property value is not created in isolation. It exists because thousands of people prefer to remain here rather than leave. Values rise because Lincoln families choose to stay, buyers choose to move in, and landlords continue to invest. If all that energy ever reversed, values would fall. The fact that values have continued to rise across 14 years shows that the city has not lost its appeal. 3 practical takeaways before we head into 2026. Know your number. Not a guess, not a neighbour's price. A realistic valuation based on comparable sold data. Understand your why. Are you moving for space, schools, timing, finances, or lifestyle? Your strategy changes depending on the reason. Don't confuse headlines with your street. National news is useful, but your outcome is driven by local demand, presentation, and negotiation. Whether you own a Lincoln home, rent one, or are thinking of moving, the reality is that Lincoln holds billions of pounds of residential wealth, and that wealth is likely to remain resilient. Anyone can check the value of their own home at any time, but sometimes it is useful to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. It tells you far more about stability than short-term house price headlines do. If you are curious how your Lincoln home fits within that wider story, or if this raised questions about buying, selling, or renting locally, feel free to get in touch. A conversation costs nothing, and sometimes one number or one insight can help you make choices that shape the next decade of your life. To ensure all our clients get the absolute best experience and a total marketing strategy as unique as their homes, we only list 20 properties per month. Our January market appraisal slots are now available to book. With Walters, you are always a name and not just a number. Thank you for your support over the past year. Have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year.